Howdy folks, monthly update for the month just been, that was March, as we sit here early April. Men's Six Nations is done, France were the champions. Women's Six Nations is underway, England and France looking for a showdown in that one. Champions Cup knockout stages getting back underway, Super Rugby halfway through the season. Heaps of rugby going on. Thank you so much for being here. Rugby update, we're going to go through some of the stats and whatnot for the channel for the month that was. It's a bit of rugby news as well, with Spain potentially heading for Rugby World Cup hosting rights. Another rugby player heading to the NFL, following the footsteps of Louis Rees-Zammit. And then also Hoskins Sotutu, a man who has multiple rugby eligibilities, thinking about his future. We will start with some stats and some thanks. As I said, thank you for being here. It is you guys viewing and liking and subscribing and commenting and whatnot that make the channel what it is. But yeah, where are you guys all from? Well, the UK and Ireland are number one, number two for the month of March. Kind of unsurprising, given that the Six Nations was on. South Africa third, but also France coming in at 4, with almost 13% of the viewers from France. That's unusually high, but welcome to all you French viewers as well. Probably a fair few French fans looking for some rugby content, with France doing so well in the Six Nations. I had a look by cities. It seemed to be the usual suspect: Paris and Bordeaux and Toulouse, but even Strasbourg had 308 views. So welcome to whoever is coming along from Strasbourg. New Zealand was there in 5th spot for the month. 93% dudes, 7% women, which is about normal, but back in the day it used to be kind of closer to 98, 99 to 1 or 2, so slightly more balanced than before, if you can call 93 to 7 any kind of balanced. And then YouTube always tells me what other channels viewers of this channel watch, and it's usually things like Squid Rugby, Egg Chasers Rugby, Rugby Analyst, the Rugby Pod, but then there's a couple of new ones which were new to me: the Rugby Girl and the Amateur Rugby Podcast. So there you go. If there's any other good rugby channels that you guys can recommend, feel free to let us know. Also need to say a big thanks to the patrons who support the channel. I will scroll their names on this wall of glory here. If you guys want to join this illustrious group of people, there's a link down in the description. For Patreon, the minimum tier is pretty low. I think it's like $1 or $2 a month. But yeah, special thanks to Jack McHugh and to Angus. But these folks essentially help keep this channel going. So put out a little bit of extra content there. There'll be early content, early access, or weekly update with the kind of Super Brew predictions and news and stuff. So yeah, if you want to join this community, feel free. But otherwise, subscribe to the channel. It would be a massive thing just to kind of get those numbers up as we head towards 100,000 potentially. We're still around 10,000 away from there. Rugby World Cup, Spain. After all this talk about it potentially going somewhere in the Middle East, it seems like Spain is emerging as a potential favourite to host the 2035 World Cup. Because remember, the next one is in Australia. The one after that is in the US. So all the talk is Europe, it needs to come back to Europe. South Africa, I don't know where this leaves you, because you guys haven't had a World Cup since 1995. But Europe, the Pacific, Japan's had it. The Americas are getting it for the first time, but it seems like Europe is the kind of favoured destination. Spain has been now talked about with the kind of cherry on top stuff of some big footballing venues potentially being on the cards to host some matches, like the Bernabeu or the Nou Camp. Those would certainly be attractive prospects, because there's a lot of bums that can go on the seats of those big stadiums, and they're also, really well-known stadiums around the world. So there would be kind of a special factor of seeing, a Rugby World Cup match played at such an iconic kind of football ground. So apparently, yeah, the Spanish delegation has been talking to World Rugby with their intention to put in a bid. And there's even talks, at least in The Guardian, if you can believe their article, that Japan might be back on the cards for 2039 if they're going to head back to kind of Asia. So South Africa just seems to be out in the cold. But that is where the Rugby World Cup news is at. NFL, Jordan Petaia, who's had numerous caps for the Wallabies. I think he topped 30 caps for the Wallabies, 25 years old, in his prime, in a British and Irish Lions tour year. He's not going to be playing for the Wallabies. Remember, he ditched rugby union at the end of last year. He's been going through the NFL's International Player Pathway Program, the same way that Louis Rees-Zammit did, and he has got himself a contract to join the kind of training roster of the LA Chargers, apparently as a tight end. I thought he was a little bit small for a tight end, but I guess he's kind of on the borderline. You know, he's just over 100 kilos, so I guess he is big enough. He's probably slightly quicker and more agile than the kind of standard tight end, but I don't follow the NFL enough to know whether he's kind of got the right stuff to make it. He's a pretty good athlete, but he is going to be up against some of the most elite athletes in the world. But apparently, from all the guys who've been on the most recent International Player Pathway Program, he's the first and only one thus far to pick up a contract. So that must stand him in at least decently good stead. I mean, he talked when he left rugby about having watched the NFL growing up, and his dad used to let him stay home from school on the Super Bowl days to watch the Super Bowl. So apparently he's liked the NFL for a while, but it just, as a rugby fan, it just sucks when you've got an elite athlete who was a regular Wallaby, albeit a bit injury prone, missing out on one of the biggest events that happens to your country every 12 years in terms of the British and Irish Lions coming to town. So from a rugby point of view, that's unfortunate, but obviously wish him all the best. It'll be interesting to see if he or Rees-Zammit is able to actually get a game first, because neither of them has kind of made the full roster just yet. And then Hoskins Sotutu, a Blues player for my local club, who was the Super Rugby Player of the Year last year, couldn't get a game with the All Blacks, with Scott Robertson opting not to pick him. The pick of Scott Robertson seemed to be pretty justified, because Wallace Satiti went on to become the breakthrough World Rugby Breakthrough Player of the Year. So the selection of Satiti seemed to justify itself ahead of Sotutu. Even if as a Blues fan I was pretty disappointed that the guy having such a cracking season at number 8 for the Blues couldn't crack the All Blacks. But remember, he's got a Fijian dad and an English mum. So he is also eligible for England and for Fiji once he has served the kind of stand-down period from the All Blacks, which is ticking along the longer he is not selected. Apparently, Hoskins said he's obviously focused on the Blues, and he's focused on, just playing his own game well without worrying about what's going on abroad. But his agent has, of course, as agents do, been kind of having some conversations, so there could be potentially a switch for him. Personally, I think it's going to be pretty hard for anyone to crack the English back row. If there's one position England are absolutely stacked in, it is the back row. So I wouldn't kind of put out a heap of hope that is kind of like an easier option by any means. I don't know if it's going to be any easier to crack the English back row than it is the New Zealand one. You could say he's up against Ardie Savia for number 8, so maybe that is pretty hard, but yeah, England is not going to be a heck of a lot easier. They're both pretty stacked. So we will see what happens as he decides his future. I'm sure if he doesn't get any All Blacks caps in the kind of next campaign until his Blues contract runs out, he will absolutely head abroad, and I wouldn't blame him. He could certainly be earning a lot more playing club rugby elsewhere than here in New Zealand. But you guys let us know your thoughts. Cheers as always for the support. Everyone doing the Patreon thing, the Buy Me a Beer thing. It all helps out. But yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.